The stars looked close enough to touch, but to the Zarn Dominion, Earth was little more than a dim, unregistered blip on the outer edge of Sector J9. It wasn't even worth cataloging. No advanced power grid, no quantum signature, not even a proper planetary defense field. The Zarn dismissed us as primitives, barely above the level of feral fauna. They weren't wrong. Not entirely. It had been less than a century since humans learned to leave their own planet without blowing themselves up. And even then, most of the galaxy regarded us as a curiosity, not a threat. The Zarn only took notice after one of their mining convoys veered too close to Earth and got disabled by a weather balloon. The balloon tangled in their intake fans and shut down 3 reactors. A balloon. To them, it was hilarious. To us, it was proof. Proof they could be touched. I'm Sergeant Kara Leung, Earth Resistance Forces, though we mostly called ourselves the Rock Slingers. We didn't have starships. We didn't have railguns or AI fleets. What we had was grit, some clever physics, and a stubborn refusal to stay conquered. The invasion started like every Zarn expansion. Automated probes, then orbital patrols, then command drop units the size of city blocks. Their soldiers were sleek, lizard-like, and arrogant. They hovered over our cities with their lev tanks and looked down on us like children playing in mud. When their commander issued his ultimatum in perfect, synthesized English, I remember laughing. Surrender your resources and your population will be unharmed. Resistance will result in total disintegration. Yeah, that went over well. They took New Delhi first, popped its defense shield like a soap bubble, and parked a flagship over the Ganges. My team watched from the Himalayan foothills, cold, furious, and half-starved. We were 5 humans with a stolen transmitter, a pile of magnetic rocks, and a mission we all agreed was insane. So let me get this straight, said Murph, my demolitions guy. You want us to break into the Zarn flagship with rocks. Not just rocks, I corrected, brushing snow off a boulder the size of a goat. Ferromagnetic basalt, with a high iron content. And we're not breaking in, we're catching a ride. Jules, our physics grad-turned-weapons expert, pointed to the glowing disk hovering in the sky. That thing's got an active gravel array. If we launch a payload with the right magnetic charge, the ship's own defense field will think it's a part of the hull. It'll pull it in. And we ride the boulder up, said Murph deadpan. Yabba-dabba-doo. Exactly. Our target was the hangar bay of the Zarn flagship, the Obedience. It was a kilometer long, shaped like a manta ray, and bristling with plasma arrays. Jules swore the gravel control systems were clustered in the central bay. Vulnerable, if you could reach them. We only had one shot. We attached steel rods to the basalt, wrapped it in copper wire from stripped transformers, and buried directional electromagnets around the hillside. It took 3 nights and most of our scavenged equipment to rig the launch path. This is the stupidest plan I've ever loved, muttered Kai, our sniper. You realize if this works, we'll be the first humans to board a Zarn warship. Correction, I said. We'll be the first primitives to hijack it. At 0430 hours, we triggered the coil launch. The mountains shuddered as the electromagnets fired in sequence. Our rock sled, a 2.3-ton chunk of magnetized basalt, shot into the sky like a black comet. Jules and I were strapped into the back, wrapped in a jerry-rigged metal cage for stabilization. Murph and Kai would follow later if we gave the signal. The world turned sideways. The gravel caught us like a spider catching a fly. Our sled stopped accelerating under its own power and began to drift upward, drawn in by the Zarn's own technology. Alarms shrieked in our ears from our cobbled-together helmets as the oxygen tanks rattled. Jules screamed something about trajectory corrections. I screamed back something unprintable. Then light exploded around us as we breached the hangar field. Gravity slammed us down. The sled shattered. We tumbled onto a metal floor covered in glowing glyphs. For a split second, the Zarn deck crew stared at us. 2 filthy humans in padded leather and scavenged armor, clutching a broken cage and a crowbar. Then Jules pulled the pin on a paint bomb. The explosion was loud, messy, and bright orange. It coated the entire hangar in opaque dye, standard issue distraction from our resistance stash. While the Zarn choked and screamed, we ran. The layout was a nightmare of curving walls, levitating pathways, and doors that required biosignatures. Luckily, Jules had a disruptor baton stolen from a scout patrol. It fried locks with enough voltage to light a stadium. We sprinted for the central core. The gravel controls were exactly where she said they'd be. Pulsing nodes of blue crystal, surrounded by semi-organic interface pods. We didn't understand the tech, but we did understand leverage. I jammed the crowbar into the nearest node and yanked. The floor tilted. In the command deck above, alarms erupted. Emergency override systems kicked in, and the ship's guidance lurched. Outside, the massive hull began to drift. Not crash, but float off course. "You just disabled orbital stabilization," Jules shouted. "Better than being dead," I yelled. "Do it again." By the time the ship's guards arrived, we were gone, ducked into a vent system with a crude map sketched on a food wrapper. It smelled like burning wires and alien sweat. We crawled until our arms went numb. And then contact. Muff's voice crackled through our dented comms. "You idiots made it. Half the fleet's scrambling to compensate for the Obedience's course drift. I think they think it's a mutiny." "It is a mutiny," I replied. "Just not from their side. We found a utility shaft that connected to the bridge access. Muff and Kai would launch a secondary strike to force more confusion. Our goal: take the command core. Or die trying. We weren't trained. We weren't armed. But for the first time since Earth fell, we had something better than tech. We had leverage. And a crowbar. And we weren't done yet. The problem with hijacking an alien warship using rocks and stolen copper wire is what comes after. You see, gravity's not a constant on a Zarn flagship. It's adjustable, programmable, even weaponizable. So when Jules cracked the gravel core in the central bay, we didn't just shift the ship's trajectory. We destabilized the entire internal field matrix. Now gravity tilted sideways in one corridor, reversed in another, and in one cursed engineering shaft, it pulled outward like we were being flushed through space itself. "Next time," Jules groaned as we dangled from a wall-mounted conduit, "we bring gyros. Or duct tape." The comms buzzed. "This is Murph. You broke something big. They're scrambling across their entire armada. One of their cruisers is tail-spinning into lunar orbit. Whatever you did, do it again." "Copy," I grunted, then swung myself onto a horizontal walkway, though horizontal no longer meant anything. "We're heading for the bridge. If we get the command uplink, we can lock out the fleet. Or crash it into a sun," Jules muttered. "Just saying." Our crawl through the ventilation network dumped us into a maintenance hub 2 levels below the bridge. The space was half machinery, half fungus. The Zarn used biotech in ways we didn't fully understand. Walls that pulsed like skin, pipes that hissed with alien pheromones. It was hot, humid, and reeked like burnt licorice. "Lovely," I muttered, wiping slime off my boot. "Feels like hiking through a dragon's colon." We weren't alone. 2 Zarn engineers, tall, eyeless creatures with whip-like arms, floated into the chamber, muttering in their own guttural language. Jules and I ducked behind a console as one of them manipulated a glowing panel that pulsed beneath its touch. We had no translator, no weapons, and 2 options: get spotted and vaped, or improvise. So, of course, we went with option 3, start a fire. Jules hurled a cracked power cell into a vat of coolant. It exploded in a burst of violet flame, setting off alarms and cascading failures. While the Zarn panicked, we sprinted through the hatch they'd left open, ducking into the lift shaft. "This better go up," I said, jamming a crowbar between the doors. "It goes somewhere, and that's better than here." We climbed, hand over hand, rung after rung, for what felt like hours. The shaft vibrated with distant klaxons and the heavy thrum of redirected energy. Zarn tech wasn't elegant. It was alive and unstable. We passed arteries of blue light pulsing like veins, heat radiating from them in waves. At last, a hatch. Locked. Jules jammed a multi-tool into the interface node and sparked it. Sparks flew. The lock sputtered and opened with a hiss of pressured gas. We crawled onto the bridge. Zarn command decks were structured like amphitheaters, with platforms spiraling around a central nerve cluster, a semi-organic control throne pulsing with living fiber and data streams. 5 Zarn officers floated at stations, unaware of our presence, until we opened fire. By fire, I mean Murph's distraction bomb. A second paint blast, this time loaded with synthetic pheromone goo stolen from their tech depots. It smelled like burning tires and made the Zarn hallucinate aggression. They turned on each other instantly. Jules and I sprinted through the chaos toward the command node. A spear of plasma missed me by centimeters. I tackled the throne, shoved the crowbar between its pulsing plates, and twisted. Pain. A shockwave of psychic backlash hit me like a mental landslide. I collapsed, convulsing. My nose bled. Jules yanked me upright, dragged me behind a panel. "They've got neural links to the throne," she said. "It's semi-sentient. You touched it directly. It almost ate you." "Noted," I coughed. "Let's try unplugging it instead." She found a cluster of organic conduits and jammed her shock baton into them. The throne screamed, a sound in our heads more than in our ears, and the control lights flickered. The ship lurched. "Gravity's gone," she said. And it had. We floated. Outside the main viewport, we saw the Obedience drifting in slow, erratic circles. 3 smaller Zarn patrol ships hovered nearby, broadcasting warning signals. They didn't attack, yet, likely waiting for confirmation of our intent. Jules floated to a console and began slapping buttons. "I can't read this, but some of the iconography's patterned. Look, this one repeats every 4 nodes. Maybe it's a command override." "Try it," I said. She did. The ship vibrated. A siren blared. Muff's voice exploded in our earpieces. "You just activated the comms array. You're live. Galactic. Broadcast." Oops. A 30-meter-wide hologram of Jules' confused face blinked into existence in front of every major Zarn ship within 10 light years. She waved. "Ah. Hi." I shoved her aside. "This is Sergeant Kara Leung of the Earth Resistance. Your flagship is compromised. Stand down, or we crash this thing into your fleet. You have 5 minutes." We cut the transmission. Jules blinked. "Did we just declare war?" "Nah," I said. "We just told them who we really are." Seconds later, the bridge door exploded inward. Zarn shock troops. 7 of them. Full armor. Plasma blades. We were dead. Then the vent behind them burst open, and Murph and Kai dropped in, wielding a jury-rigged coil gun made from a dismantled stasis battery. The shockwave took out half the Zarn. The others charged. Kai met them head-on, a salvaged blade in each hand, spinning like a storm. Murph tossed a cluster charge and shouted, "Exit strategy now." I slammed a command glyph on the main console. The ship shuddered. "I just vented Deck 6, I said. Murph grinned. "Where are the escape pods?" Jules tapped her helmet. "There aren't any, but I think I can make one." We bolted. Jules led us through an auxiliary corridor lined with drone deployment chutes. She yanked a panel, hot-wired a drop capsule, and crammed us in. It wasn't meant for humans, but neither was this whole war. 5 seconds, she said, sealing the hatch. "Hope you don't mind tight spaces." "Let's go home," I whispered. The chute fired. We plummeted toward Earth in a flaming streak of alien alloy and stolen fire. And behind us, the Obedience began to fall. But not crash. Drift. Because deep in its command core, Jules had uploaded a virus. Not just a virus. A manual. A manual for humanity. Because if we could hijack a flagship with rocks, imagine what we'd do with time. And now time was on our side. We crash-landed in the salt flats of northern India. The capsule hit the ground hard, bounced, rolled, and tore a path through half a kilometer of dry earth before lodging in a ridge of rock. It cracked open like a walnut, ejecting us in a cloud of dust and debris. Jules coughed violently beside me, her face smudged with soot and triumph. "Next time," she groaned, "parachutes." Murph stumbled out last, dragging what remained of the coil launcher. 10 out of 10, he said, limping. Would hijack again. Overhead, the sky shimmered with streaks of fire. Not falling stars, escape pods and debris from the Obedience. Our virus hadn't destroyed the ship, but it had made it unusable to the Zarn. Systems shut down in sequence. Gravels failed. Plasma turrets powered down. For a race obsessed with perfection, the chaos we left behind was the ultimate insult. We didn't stay long. The Earth Resistance had fallback tunnels, hidden relays. We knew the Zarn would retaliate, but they didn't. Not at first. Instead, for 3 whole days, the sky remained quiet, silent, watching. Then came the signal. A transmission, not from the Zarn High Command, but from the Galactic Accord, the interstellar council that supposedly kept order. We didn't even know they existed until they addressed us directly. "People of Earth," the voice said, fluid metallic, neither male nor female. "Your act of piracy was witnessed across 12 sectors. The Zarn Dominion has filed grievance charges. As per Accord law, you may defend your actions before the Conclave or face extermination. You have 1 cycle to prepare. 1 cycle. 3 Earth days. We had just declared galactic war, and now we were being invited to court. "We're going to need pants," Murph said solemnly. The Accord's delegation vessel arrived in orbit a day later. It didn't hover. It floated, like a celestial judge descending from myth. It made no demands, no attacks, no shows of force. We sent Kara, Jules, Murph, and an envoy of linguists, scientists, and even a historian. Our best. They didn't want tech. They wanted context. And so we told them everything. How we'd been invaded. How the Czarn called us animals. How we reverse-engineered field tech using copper wiring and steel crowbars. How we didn't conquer their ship. We simply refused to stay beneath it. When we showed them footage of the magnetic launch, the crowbar hacking, the hallucination paint bombs, some of the delegates laughed. Not mockery. Respect. Then came the conclave session. A hall the size of a stadium, filled with representatives of 240 civilizations. The Czarn delegates stood at a translucent podium, all scales and fury. They used rocks, it hissed. They corrupted our systems with animal tools. They violated every known law of warfare and decency. And then Kara stood. No fancy armor. No exotic weapon. Just her scorched uniform, a cracked crowbar strapped to her back. "Yeah," she said. "We used rocks. Because that's what you left us with." She didn't make a speech. She told a story of how a small species learned to throw stones, build fire, and sail oceans. Of how we survived ice ages and bombs and our own worst instincts. Of how we learned to rise, fall, and rise again. And how, when the galaxy told us we didn't belong, we built a seat at the table with our bare hands. The chamber was silent. Then the Accord's judgment AI, an ancient construct older than most stars, delivered its ruling. In accordance with Galactic Accord law, humanity shall not be punished for defending itself against unauthorized aggression. The Czarn Dominion is fined and suspended from conclave participation for 2 cycles. Murmurs spread through the delegates. The Czarn delegate sputtered. This is treason. They are primitive." The AI's voice was cold. "Then perhaps evolution has teeth." That was 6 months ago. Since then, Earth's changed. The Czarn no longer patrol our orbit. Instead, envoys from a dozen species now visit Earth, not to conquer, but to study us. To learn how a stone-wielding, scrapyard species hijacked a flagship and rewrote the rules. Jules runs a joint research facility in Peru now. Murph lectures alien cadets on improvisational warfare. Kai vanished into deep space. Last we heard, he was teaching hand-to-hand combat to sentient gas clouds. And me. I was promoted. Lieutenant Colonel now. Fancy. But I still keep the crowbar. Still scratched. Still burned. Because it reminds me. It's not the tools that win wars. It's the hands that wield them. And humanity? We've got the dirtiest, most determined hands in the galaxy. So next time the stars laugh at us, next time they call us backward, barbaric, primitive, just remember, we hijacked a flagship with a rock. Imagine what we'll do next.